Hey, let me just see if the tape is rolling.
Okay. That's right. You know, it's funny. It's funny. We still say rolling. You know, it's still the term. You know,
Right.
nothing's rolling, but
Are you out of film yet?
yeah, that's right.
So I'm pleased to be talking to Bernie Kirsh today. My name's Monk Rowe for the Phillies Jazz Archive. And congratulations on your career.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that.
I
It's
know a
been,
lot of engineers and people who would be envious of what you've done.
oh well, that's nice to know that people have it in that kind of regard. You know, for yourself and others who do things, you know, you just do them, and so not much more than that, really.
That's fairly eloquent, I think.
Well, it's true. It's
Yes,
true.
you just do them. And I'm going to ask you a little bit about that, but I wanted to start with a little scenario. You and I are fairly close together in age, and I was looking at the top songs of 1966, and I was thinking of you, if my stats are correct, you were midway through college around then.
Yeah, 66. I was. Yeah, that's right. Midway through college. Yeah.
Yeah. And the playlist, top songs of that year included everyone from Mamas and the Papas, the Beatles, Ray Conniff, the Monkees, and Frank Sinatra. So, were you a person who listened to music by this point, noticing things that the average listener did not?
I don't know about. I don't know. I don't know what the average listener is listening to, but I mean, my interest was not listening for anything in particular. It was just enjoying the music. I started out as a musician, playing, you know, through I guess grade school, junior high school. Started playing brass instruments, trombone, baritone horn, that sort of thing. Always had an interest in my life that I never really fulfilled totally to my liking of keyboard piano playing. But the brass instruments were, and the trombone in particular, were my way into a musical life, and consisted of all of the things that you do in school and high school and around them. I grew up in Philadelphia, which had a great music program, by the way. There were some wonderful people there and a great curriculum. And you know, in high school you get theory, harmony, counterpoint, composition in high school, and they had the all city programs. So my interest was in playing music. I enjoyed it.
At some point, did you start hearing ways of recording music that you noticed, and then what made you enter this world?
Happenstance. I had no interest. Well, I'll back up a little bit. When I was in college, I actually turned into a theater major, and got involved in technical theater. Did all the other things that a theater student would do, acting, directing, and so forth. But then got an offer for a graduate assistantship in technical theater, building sets and that sort of thing. So I went to graduate school doing that. And while I was there, I got involved in the television station at the school. And of course, I had my theater background. I started to understand lighting and all those aspects. Sound was always the poor cousin. It never got its due. So I really didn't have much attention on sound and no interest in it, really. But then after college, after grad school, I went to New York to want to work in television. So I was staying with a friend in an apartment in Greenwich Village, and it's on Bleecker Street. And right down the street was the Bitter End, which was a mainstream club in those days. This is 1970. And it was there that I heard there was an opening from somebody, and to doing the lights and sound. And I knew about lighting, didn't know anything about sound. So I took the job and did that for about a year or so, and then there would be recordings that would go on there, live recordings. Curtis Mayfield, I mean, all these great artists that were just coming through there. I mean, there would be Carly Simon opening for Chris Christopherson, and it was that era, but major acts. So the people who would come to record were of some experience, and they would park a truck outside. And so one day an engineer came in who was doing the recording, and we started talking and this and that. And he mentioned that Jimi Hendrix had opened up a studio around the corner, and that's where he was working. I said, "Oh, can I come watch? Be kind of interested, And so I went over there every day for a couple of weeks. I was working nights, of course, at the club. And then during the day, I would just go over there and spend hours just sitting in the back of the room watching what was going on, and got interested. I got interested in the process, in working with musicians, which I had been doing at the club. But I love musicians, and it's my group, my people, and so it was a way for me to interact with them. I wasn't playing anymore. I really, wasn't playing the horn anymore. I was really involved more in these service activities around music.
Can you recall what kind of recording deck, or what did the booth look like when you first went?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, very vivid. It was, I was back in studio, at the time it was back in Studio B, and it had a data mix console, which I don't think there were a lot of them. I think Atlantic had one or two, and Eddie Kramer, who was the founding engineer at the studio, he of course most famous for his work with Jimi Hendrix, and did so many of his recordings, and it was Jimmy's studio. So Eddie would stipulate what the equipment would be, and he worked with a great technical staff, a guy named Sharon Ron, who was a big help in putting that place together, and so forth. And there were other guys around, a wonderful, wonderful engineer and a guy named Dave Palmer, who worked with Eddie. He was his first assistant. So there were a lot of people there, and it was outfitted very, very well. And we had, they were still doing 8-track recording, of course, 4-track and stereo and mono, but the track count at that point was really 8. 16 was just in at that point. 24-track recording hadn't occurred yet. So you had an MM1000, basically it was a video desk, an Ampex video desk that they converted to be able to record analog audio. And there would be a 4-track recorder and stereo recorders. And that was the room aside from the microphones. So basic.
And 2-inch tape, was that?
Yeah, 2-inch tape. Yeah, there was the 8-track, of course, was 1-inch tape, but the 16-track was 2-inch tape. It sounded great. It was chunky sound.
I can remember the first time I saw that kind of thing. I was like, whoa, look at all this stuff.
Yeah, I know. Well, it hit me like that too. I loved it. It was just, I don't know, it seemed very real to me. It seemed, it was a way to do something substantial. The quality was high. And I saw an opportunity to have fun and create a valuable product with someone else, with musicians. And I loved it. It was great.
Did they give you okay, Bernie, go wrap up these chords, go solder this thing, or move the drums around, that kind of task?
Well, there was a lot of that. Not much soldering, but there was a lot of moving and winding up and setting up and tearing down and do this and do that. It was, it's an apprenticeship. It doesn't really occur these days, but it was. Truthfully, my concept of input and output, one going, you put a microphone as input and a speaker as output, or if you go to a patch bay, how do you route a signal? What is in and out? That was a new concept for me, really, in terms of really understanding the basics of audio, and I got it through just doing and making mistakes. So that's my life. That was my life.
What mistakes did you make?
Well, a lot. And you in there working, 200-300 hours a week in the studio, and you're just there all the time.
Yes. And
session after session, all kinds of different people. There were the house engineers who were doing the dates that people had come to the studio for, and it was the beginnings of guest engineers, independent engineers who were coming in to use the studio and would come in with a client, with an artist. So there were a lot of those and a lot of great opportunity to sit and watch these masters do what they were doing. So that was what was going on.
Do you recall the first time you were asked to splice tape?
I do, yeah, actually, yeah. It was an 8-track recording. I think it was Paul Winter. I think was the artist, actually, and I was assisting on the date. And the engineer said, "Yeah, put that together, like that. Yes, put some splicing tape. Put that together." I thought, "Oh man!" So, and you do it, yeah. Like any other craft, you just learn how to do it.
You observe and listen, and then
and practice.
Yeah. I don't think I'd want to practice on a real date, But
yeah, well, it's funny. That was those were the techniques in those days. So you didn't think much about it. I mean, subsequently there would be edits that I would attempt to do, and hopefully successfully, that required, slices of a piece of tape, and you might have 3 or 4 different tries at it that were all sliced, and you'd have to get them in order on the backing with the tape backing so that it would play correctly. Because if it didn't play, then you just destroyed something. So you learn these editing techniques. It's a little easier today with Pro Tools and Logic Audio, than a little less nerves going on. Yeah.
Am I correct that you recorded Patti Smith's Horses record?
Yeah, I did. That was 1975, fall of 75, I think, October, somewhere in there. Yeah.
Do you remember what you thought about it at the time? I guess it's as simple as asking, did you like it?
I did. I enjoyed her creativity. It was, just give you a little background going into that, because this is now 4 years after I started working at Electric Lady, and working as an engineer. I had done a lot of stuff, just sitting and watching. And, you get the first session I was on was observing of Stevie Wonder. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that was going on there. And great engineers, Bob Markaloff and Malcolm Cecil, 2 guys, and they were recording and producing Stevie at the time. And I got to sit and watch these guys, and they were developing, they were using Moog synthesizers. And they had one called Tonto, was the name, and it was these 3 huge panels of Moog equipment and so forth, and they would work overnight to create a bass sound or whatever they were doing. So there was that, and then another date comes in. It's John McLaughlin and the Mahavishnu Orchestra. That's when my life changed. And I was in the studio setting up. Billy Cobham is the drummer, and I was setting up the mics on his drums. Door opens, and John walks in, and looking great. I mean, up until this point, most of what I'd seen were rock groups, you know, of the era, that sort of thing. And John came in a different level of competence and aesthetic. And really all these guys they were just great musicians. And I took note of that. I thought, you know, this is an aesthetic that I really like. This is a high level of communication and competence as players, and people were liking it. There was a wide audience, and they were trying new things, you know, as were other people coming off the Miles Davis experience at the time, the jazz fusion. And so that kind of locked me in. That was like 72, 73, whatever that was.
Yeah, I must insert that I was living in Buffalo at the time, and someone gave me tickets to see the Mahavishnu Orchestra, and I didn't know what or who they were. And wow.
Yeah.
I was just totally blown away by that.
Yeah, it wasn't just precision, and it wasn't just technical expertise. It was using that to create beautiful communication and interplay between the guys, and it was at a high level, you know. Anyway, so I enjoyed that, and so I was in that mindset, and I was still doing, you know, rock dates, and then the next thing that happens is in 74, Stanley Clarke comes in to do his recording, do an album. I think it's his second album. And so I did some assisting on that, and the engineer, Ken Scott, great engineer, said, listen, I can't make it tomorrow night. Why don't you record this for me? I'll mix it, but you know, if you record it for me, that'd be great. It's just a trio. I said, okay. It's just bass, guitar, and piano. And I go in and I set it up the way I thought it should be set up. And in comes John McLaughlin, who I'd worked with before, and he was playing acoustic guitar. And Chick Corea comes in. So it was the three guys, and that's when I met these characters and as a group. And it was a beautiful, beautiful session. It was on the second round. It was called "Song to John." Was the name of the piece that Stanley had written. It's I think it's in 2 parts. And so that was my introduction to Chick. And then I didn't see him for another, I would say, better part of a year. Prior to seeing him again, I was interviewed to do an album for Patti Smith. She wanted to work at Electric Lady, and so for the vibe, you know, she was, because it was Jimmy's place and so forth. And so I went and talked to her, and we worked it out, and I started doing the recording, and did it, and enjoyed her her style. She was really a poet, and that was her, I think, her main impetus. I mean, she enjoyed the music and so forth. This is my view, not hers, of what she was doing. And she was expressing her music via her sense of poetry and so forth. And she was working with some other musicians. But it was basically in rock. It was the beginning of beginnings of punk rock. So it wasn't something that I had been digesting at all. It was something new for me. But I got into the game of it, and I was just having fun. It was just fun. So,
did you ever have to go out into the main room and tell a guitar player, say, "Listen, I can't record you at that volume"? Because I was listening to the title track and reminded me of some of the stuff that I've been a part of in a studio here in Central New York, and I found this quote from Rolling Stone. They were talking about the date that we're discussing and the band part of it, and this reviewer said, "The instrumental music is the kind of artful rock and roll primitivism that has long characterized the New York underground."
Oh, interesting.
You know that at the time?
I know things were going on in the underground, but I wasn't fully aware of it. There were CBGBs and there was another place on the east side that was, I've forgotten the name of it now, but yeah.
Well, the record's become quite a historical marker. I think it's part of the National Recording Registry, for a significant historical and cultural event. So it's nice you.
And it just became a Grammy Hall of Fame winner as well, or not winner was the wrong term. I guess it's now part of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
So then comes Leprechaun. Is that right?
Just after that is a Leprechaun. Now we're talking from October to December. So did that album and then started the Leprechaun in December of that year, 75, late 75. And that was another major shift in influence and path of my life going into that and working with Chick. And we hit it off. Really, I didn't really get to know him much during the previous recording. I just did my job and that sort of thing. But now we're working together on a longer basis, and I got to know him, and we did this project together, and it just fit like a glove. It was. I knew exactly what he wanted to hear because I was hearing it myself. It was just easy communication.
Could you be more maybe specific about what he wanted to hear and what you heard also?
Well, I mean, he would play. There are two types of things that were going on. There was a room full of musicians, which is one scenario, and there would be building a song, which was another scenario, which would be an overdubbing scenario, where he would use synths and percussion and that sort of thing. The opening piece of that is like that. It's just synthesized. It's just creative fun. It just sounds and music. And when I heard it, there was nothing to do except to make things in relationship to others in terms of volume and panning and treatment, other than what I wanted to hear. And what I wanted to hear from the different parts that were coming in were things that he agreed with. So there was that kind of reality that went on, and that really continued for the course of the project.
Did they record most of that music with a click track?
Not at all.
Okay.
That was Steve Gadd.
Well, they had a click.
I mean, that album. If you could, there are three components that go through that album. One is Chick, one is Steve Gadd, and the other is Gail Moran, her vocals all the way through. But in terms of the basic track, not the vocals, of course, which added so much, but the instrumentation. There's a lot going on, but basically Chick and Steve are it's almost like a duet album in a sense. If you listen to that relationship, it's just amazing through that. So there was no click track, no.
Okay.
And I tell you, when you deal with Chick and you deal with Steve, you don't need any click.
As an engineer, to go from Patti Smith to that Leprechaun seems to me to be quite a leap, because you had to record strings and woodwinds and vocals.
Yeah, and they were all live in the room too. I mean, it was all in one room. We had, I had the string quartet in one area, the horns in another, the rhythm section, two bass players. There's piano and Gail's in the booth singing. So there's a lot of activity, which added to the fun factor. I mean, it went out the roof, having all those musicians in the room.
Did the room have a distinct sound itself?
I don't know that it did. I think it allowed for what was recorded in there to sound pleasant and musical. You wouldn't get sounds occurring in another part of the room that weren't favorable coming in. The room was set up nicely acoustically. John Storick was the architect, and I think that was his first studio, by the way, too. I think, I may be wrong, but I think so. And anyway, so we have a room full of musicians, and that's we have Steve Gadd sitting in. It wasn't a drum booth, but it was like a partition that went around the drums, and he had 3 or 4 music stands in front of him, with the music strewn, like this, and he'd be reading the music and playing, and it was just that. It was just a busy scene of competence showing itself up.
And Chick arranged all that music himself?
He did, yeah.
Yeah.
He did, yeah. And great musicians.
Yeah.
So that was, and that project was exactly what I understood. I understood from a mixer's point of view what that music was. It was just very real to me. I didn't have nothing to think about. I could just set up things and do what I needed to do to get the final result. So there wasn't a lot of trial and error going on. It was, I heard that, and I tried to accomplish that. And we just went on. I mean, of course, with Chick's music, you can't go far afield anyway from anything that sounds great, because what you're working with lends itself easily to enjoyment. I don't think you can mess it up too much.
Were the mixes done with just Chick and yourself?
Yeah, just hands on the faders. There was no automation in those days.
Right, hands on faders, yeah.
Hands on faders. So, mostly it was just me. He would I guess, from time to time he would come in and handle something, but mostly it was just my own figuring it out how to accomplish it. I mean, it was recorded in a way that it wasn't. There weren't a lot of crazy moves to do and that sort of thing. But what we did have, of course, were you only have a certain amount of tracks. So if you're doing overdubs, you might have to share tracks with something that's already recorded on one portion. So you'd have maybe not that this was the case, but let's say you had I don't know, a keyboard playing on the verses, but not on the choruses. So you could use the choruses for something else. So you'd record another instrument on that track in the space where you had the chorus, and and then you'd have to deal with that later. So
isn't that interesting? Because now we think, oh, how primitive,
Well, yeah, it's true.
But at the time, you worked with what you had. I can recall that exact scenario, overdubbing a part on a track that had things in it, and I'd watch the engineer. He would like, boop, boop, in and out, like
punch in and out, right?
Punch in and out for
right.
Sometimes 2 notes or something like that.
Yeah, another potential destructive activity. Yeah.
Yes,
yeah, but the tape recorders got originally there was a delay between because you have an erase head, a record head, and a play head. There are 3 heads, and they're in that order: erase, record, play. So the way they developed tape recorders, that record head also had the capability to play back for the other tracks that weren't being recorded on. So that was called the sync head. And but there was a slight distance between the erase head and the record sync head. So you'd have to anticipate your punch to allow for that time lag. So anyway, it got interesting.
How many years was it from then that you made the transition to completely digital?
Oh, digital didn't happen until the 90s. We're talking, 25 years. Well, no, actually mid 80s, I guess. Digital started really happening. I did my first digital project, recorded to digital. I think it was in 83. But Pro Tools and those sort of things didn't develop till the next decade.
Yeah. Was it a steep learning curve for you?
Well, it happened on a gradient. So, going to the digital audio workstations like Pro Tools and Logic Audio, that was a steeper gradient because it all of a sudden I was in a project where I had to do it. So I called people, I picked up any data I could, and just went in and tried it and got on the phone if I ran into trouble.
Some audiophiles, especially before the improvement of digital recordings, would insist that analog is really got the warmer sound. And where do you come down? Is that a debate for you, or do you notice any difference?
In present time?
Back when it sort of started transitioning, could you hear? Was there any harshness, or just like something sounds awry here?
I would say yes. Yeah. I remember one time there was a symposium. I think Sony was sponsoring it at Ocean Way Studios, and they were showing off their CD stuff, and they had LPs and they had CDs, and of the same project, and they would put on the CD, and you'd hear then you play the LP, and the LP went around and around, and then they took the I don't know why they did this. They took the LP and they put it on the floor and scuffed it or something, and it came back sounding funny. But they picked up the CD and they weren't as harsh with it. They kind of did something and it played well or something like that. And the truth of the matter was, even though the LP had noises, the sound was better. The underlying sound was still better. So it didn't really speak to quality. It spoke to some other quality, not good sounding stuff. So that went on, then the debate went on, and I was on the analog side all the way, but then we started doing analog recording, but digital masters. That was the next gradient. And then GRP came in, and that was what was their thing, the digital master company. So all their projects were delivered as digital products, and then it continued from there.
I remember being surprised in the recordings. The thing is finally mixed, it's done. And then I learned that not quite, has to be mastered.
Yeah, that's right.
And I was still not totally sure what exactly that means, but someone could potentially mess up a product by not mastering it correctly.
That's the case. Usually, they enhance it. Is what usually happens. I think that's what I found. If you go to the right people.
Did you have right people for yourself? Like, please send it here. Don't send it there.
Yeah, I've used a number of different mastering places over the years. The one that I tend to stay with is a guy named Bernie Grundman in Los Angeles. Bernie Grundman Mastering, and he's a master. All the equipment's tweaked and so forth. And if you're mixing in different environments, you can you make your determinations as you do by listening, and you go, okay, that sounds good. But how does it compare to other things? And is the room accurate? And I think a mastering facility, especially one like that, where all kinds of product comes through, becomes a touchstone for what might be considered a reference, a good reference as to what to make changes from. So there are other technical parts of it as well. In terms of the equipment it goes through before it goes to the plants for manufacture. But there are lots of things that they can do to alter the audio in a way that may enhance it. Of course, if you do it wrong, it doesn't enhance it, but usually it does.
Do you ever think about the fact that you're going to all this technical expertise and putting your heart and soul into a product, and then it goes out in the marketplace and people may be playing it on 2-inch speakers, either coming out of their computer now or earbuds. Can you anticipate the way it's being played when you record it?
You really can't. I mean, you can listen to it in those different formats, excuse me, different speakers and so forth, but you find a reference for yourself, and you go by that. You got to please your own aesthetic, and then compare it in the world to make sure that it's conveying properly through whatever other mediums. Yeah, because the variations are endless. Yeah. Different amplifiers, different preamps, different speakers, different rooms, different cars, whatever, wherever they're going.
I can remember listening in the 60s with transistor radio where you had one earplug, one ear.
Oh, right. Yeah, well, mono.
Luckily, it was mono. So you apparently passed Chick's audition with Leprechaun. Did he officially, in some fashion, say, you're going to be my guy?
No, not really. I mean, we did that recording, and then he called me up for the next project, basically, which was My Spanish Heart, which was the next album, and went out to Los Angeles to do that. And I was just taking it a day at a time with that. It was just what I was doing. I was still in New York working, and then I got the idea. On the next project we did the last Return to Forever album called Music Magic, out in Colorado, and it was just after that I thought, you know what, I think I want to move to Well, no, he took. I went on the road with him at that point. I became his concert sound mixer at that point. After that project, that was in '77, and it was that experience, getting to know everybody, his all the people around him, and so forth. Touring, as you know, creates a special bond, camaraderie. And I decided to move to California, and then I was just still working project by project. I was on kind of a quote, a staff member, just for a very short period of time, not much at all. Basically, I was an independent guy all these years, associated strongly, but not necessarily a salaried person.
How do you charge for your expertise? Is there a recording engineers union? Like, is there?
No, I think it's just you find out what people are getting and see if you can too.
I see.
Yeah, but you know, Chick's influence in my life was just huge. I mean, he's a guy who was a beautiful guy, just a beautiful guy. What you hear in his music is him. That's his. The spirit of Chick is what you're hearing, and that's how he was as a person. He was just beautiful guy, and very kind of a generous guy. You know, when you're in the bandstand with somebody, all of the social mechanisms that people employ in daily social interaction go away. You're just there with another player playing the music, and so you can get a feel for somebody that way. You know, because you're really dealing, it's a spiritual activity, music, you know. I mean, you're hearing it out of speakers, and that's the result of what had occurred before. But in the creative process, you know, you're talking about someone's decision to create beauty and with somebody else. And the interplay of that is the heart of it. It's why it happens. I mean, there may be all kinds of other products that occur as a result of it, but that's the essence of it. That relationship, and in relationship eventually to the audience in a live situation where things are created in a live way. And Chick was a communicator of the highest level, not only in his music but in life generally. That was one of his abilities, and so I think you find people who knew Chick would all agree that I hear the same things over and over again. You know, he lets people create. He gives, you know, it's basically allowing people to do what they do, and grant them enough life to accept what they're saying, and not to put any negative aspect on it. That's just what somebody else said, musically. And so, and you know, you can like it or not like it, but you don't have to invalidate what the guy did, and because that's invalidating him, and that's something that it seemed to me that he didn't, I didn't see him do. You know, he would handle those things in another way than directly imposing something on someone's artistry.
I see. This might be a good moment to read something or an excerpt from what you said about Chick. This is from May of 2021. Yes, he was a genius, but that's not enough of a descriptive word of all he was. He was generous as a musician as well as a person, and his love and support for other artists is unsurpassed. He loved to play with other musicians, and when he did all he could to help musicians realize their most dear and personal artistic desires. It was just as important to see the others create with great satisfaction as it was for him.
Yeah, that was basically it. Thanks for doing that. Save me some words. I already said it.
It's lovely. It definitely caught my attention and came from this, which we'll talk about soon.
Okay.
That's wonderful. I wondered what being on the road with Chick is like. You get in a venue and go, okay, what do we have today?
Well, they're of course they're all different. Each one has its. They all have the same components. It's just different problems to solve. Because I'm coming at it from a technical point of view when I walk into the venue, sound wise. Things have to be set up and connected and all that kind of stuff. Get ready for the sound check is basically it. Yeah. And that's when the musicians show up. But they all have their own problems. I really enjoy the live sound mixing that I did with Chick. It was there was nothing to think about. It just they played on stage, and I got to make it sound the way I liked it to sound. It's a real playground.
You have had a great gig.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
One thing about Chick, that he seemed to have a very distinctive sound on the Fender Rhodes. And I wonder if you had anything to do with that.
No, that. I recorded. It depends which era you're talking about. I mean, he got into the Fender Rhodes early, before Bernie.
Yeah.
But actually, for Miles, I think it was Miles or shortly after Miles, and liked it. So I don't know. I don't think originally he didn't like it. I think he didn't care for it. I think he wanted to play the piano. Yeah. But then later on, he definitely adopted it. Return to Forever, it's in full force. Yeah. That's in full force. So it was a sound he'd already developed. He had different versions of it. There would be a kind of a distorted sound that he would get sometimes when he hit hard, and he had delays and those sorts of things on it. But that came out of his interest in having the instrument sound.
Is there a Bernie Kirsh method of recording a Steinway Grand?
Well, I mean, I guess you got to figure out this. Usually, I mean, you can use more than two. I usually just use two mics, and put them in an area that I find apropos to the music we're going to be recording, and then go in and listen and handle things, maybe adjust things. I mean, there's no tricks. I mean, you just put the microphones there and go, maybe I should move. Am I hearing the left hand far enough to the left? I'll move the mic. Let's see, does the piano sound like it's leaning this way? Oh, I see. It's just listening and changing.
Does it sound like it's leaning this way? Yeah,
because if the right hand of the piano, if you're listening in a stereo image, if the right hand of the piano is now moving, sounding like it's more towards the center, although the note seems to be up further that way on the piano, then to me it's leaning. Yeah,
I like that. I'm picturing today's hopeful engineer who goes to a 4-year school to get a degree, and I wonder if anybody ever says that to them.
Yeah, I don't know. Good question. I think it just comes out of you record it and you have an idea of what you want it to sound like, and if it doesn't sound like that, it's leaning. I guess. But
are you protective of your hearing?
Somewhat. I try not to listen too loud. I mean, I had my hearing checked a little over a year ago, I guess, within the last couple of years, and it was some high-end loss, not much, you know. So it's still doing pretty good. Okay. But yeah, you know, I'll if there's loud sounds, you know, I did a Return to Forever tour, which can get kind of loud. I put things in my ears.
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
Did Chick's devotion to Scientology come to work with him?
Come to work with him? Well, yeah. And in what respect do you mean that?
Did you get the feeling that decisions he made were based on his belief in Scientology?
Well, I can't imagine that the things that people know to be true for themselves wouldn't be expressed by them. I think that's probably true for anything. You know, if you have a certain idea of how things are in the world and how you treat others, then you would treat them that way and so forth. Is that what you mean? That sort of thing?
I guess so. I was not a well-formed question, but I was sort of curious about what role it played in his musical life.
Well, it's hard for me to say. I mean, because you're looking, when you're hearing music coming, you're hearing the whole thing, you know? I can't imagine that there wasn't some influence in his understanding of the world, for sure. But the music comes from his soul. You know, it doesn't come from. There's not something else that is his music. You know, it's something that he's decided he wanted to make. How he lives his life and how he sees the world, that may be influenced by philosophy and so forth. But the creative process is a process that's the most personal thing you can do. It's the nearest thing to not being in this world that you can do. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you've had the experience. You know, I have, where the world goes away and you're just creating. So, and I think that's what occurs because it's coming from that place, and that place is not in this world.
He must have sensed that musical brotherhood in you.
I suppose. I mean, I think musical brotherhood may be a way to look at it. I think brotherhood is probably more apropos. I think we just hooked up as through the process of doing these things together. That was the conduit for the hookup, but the result was that there was a bond there, just like you have a friend. You know, it's just a friend. And I was fortunate, extremely fortunate enough that it was with Chick. It certainly enriched my life, and I was able to contribute to enriching other people's lives and doing for Chick what I did, and delivering it in a way that I felt was the most aesthetic and communicative way, because he's making the communication. My job was to deliver it as beautifully as possible, and when you're doing it live, you've got an audience there right away. There's no lag. It's not a recording. You're dealing with it right there, and so I could see the results. Anyway, it was I don't know what I could say. It was a pleasure and a privilege.
I'm glad you were around.
Yeah, me too.
I'm looking. You can't see it, but in front of my wall, I printed out the Bernie Kirsh discography, and number's 86. I don't know how correct that is. I'm wondering on the independent things you did besides Chick. What's
that number 86? What
86 recordings. 84.
With Chick, you mean?
No, starting with Journey to Love, Stanley Clarke is the second one. There's sort of in order.
Where did you cull these?
I got it off. I got off the internet somewhere.
Oh, okay.
I'll send you the link, and you can see what you've done.
Okay.
I was curious about your relationship to various producers, like going back to John Cale with Patti Smith. And did you find it was different if a producer had been an engineer, or if they had just not done that part of it?
The only thing is, they could speak in more technical terms, I guess, if they had been engineers. I mean, John wasn't an engineer; he was, a string player. Yeah, during that project, I guess he had to leave the project at some point, and I had to go in and take it over. Basically, it was just Patti and I at that point to bring it up through the mixing. So that was interesting. But he was an interesting guy, Velvet Underground and all that stuff. But technically, I don't think he was. That wasn't his forte.
Did you ever have to try and tell a producer that I don't think you want to do that?
Well, it depends on what the situation is. I mean, I could have a difference of opinion about something, and I would approach it in a way that wouldn't be encroaching. I mean, the job, the task is probably a greater amount of personal interaction. How shall I say? How to work with others, and how to keep things on an even keel in the control room and so forth. As much as it is a technical activity.
I wanted to speak about this project that you've been involved with Glenn Zatola. It's wonderful that the Chick's legacy is continuing, and some of these recordings are really marvelous. And it's nice that Glenn was there when Chick wanted to reach out. Glenn would. Apparently, Chick would call him up very late, said, "What are you doing? Come on over."
Yeah, I know. That was him. It's play, just total play. And they would do that. Yeah, I mean, they play great. Glenn is just a marvelous musician, just incredible. And he and Chick got along so well that way. And you can hear it in that recording.
Yeah.
It's great camaraderie there.
It's like you said right at the beginning of our interview, you just did it. You just let it happen.
Just do it. You go, just take a walk, put your foot out, take the next step. Well, there's also the decision to, like, I want to do, you make you have an objective. You create some sort of game you want to play. That's how you do stuff. You postulate something to do or to be, and you go, well, maybe if I go in this direction, I'll accomplish that. So I think that's all you do with whatever it is, But speaking about Glenn and this project, yeah, I know that he was very proud of his friendship and musical relationship with Chick, and you know, they had a really special musical bond, and he held Chick, and still does, in a high regard.
Indeed. It looks like it's doing well on with streams and so forth.
Streams, right? Yeah, the new world.
Whoever knew that we would use the word stream?
Yeah, I know.
In regards to music.
Yes, I mean, streaming. Musicians still aren't getting paid. So, you know.
What is your general, to sort of wrap up, do you have a general opinion about the music industry, the way it's recorded, the way it's delivered, the way it's not paid for, or just things in general?
Well, the music business has changed. It's become a real decentralized, in terms of recording, of course, it's decentralized, and there's good and bad. You know, I mean, what you have now is the ability of any artist to create recordings that he would like to do, any projects he would like to do, because in your own home you have a recording studio. You know, so that part is good. The difficult part is getting people to hear it, and in that respect, streaming services are a definite advantage to getting works out. You know, there are probably there's of course the record company, which is a marketing arm to use. But if you can't actually work with a record company, then streaming is an outlet aside from direct marketing that you want to do. You know, on your own. I don't know how much musicians want to do that, but so forth. So, I mean, I'm not sure. You mean in terms of direction?
The way that music is created and delivered, I think you pretty much answered my question.
Okay. Yeah. I know it's a different a different time. In some ways better. I always enjoy a room full of musicians, people having fun and just making something together. Yeah. So that's my vote.
If you were doing a 12-hour session and you finally got home, what do you like to hear afterwards?
You know, I don't know that I hear anything except my pillow. I think that's where I go. I don't put on. I mean, if I'm sitting and working, I'll put on music, and if I'm doing administrative stuff, I'll do that. But I don't. You know, it's interesting you say that. I don't sit. I do from time to time, but not like I used to, where I would sit and put an album on and just sit on the sofa and just listen to the whole album through. That seems to be a little more piecemeal these days. I don't know. How do you find it?
The same, exactly the same.
Yeah.
I mean, I play music a lot for a living, so I don't necessarily listen to music as much as a lot of people would.
Yeah. Well, probably the same for me. Yeah. But, yeah.
I've loved this conversation, and I'm going to wrap up with name this Chick Corea tune.
Uh-oh.
And you'll have to excuse my delivery. Ba-da-bum, ba-da-da, ba-da-bum.
One step.
But yeah, you got it. This is one of my favorite Chick Corea.
That's a beautiful record.
Oh,
yeah.
Man.
Yeah. I know.
One step, yes, and I don't know who made the decision, but I thought it was a spot on to put that as the first cut, side one.
That was Chick.
It's just like inviting.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, I love that, and the Friends cut is a favorite of mine too. Mm-hmm. That piece as well. So there's a lot of great stuff on it. Anyway, good. You sing great.
I'm going to put that on my resume that you said that.
Okay.
Well, I appreciate your time, and as I said, I'm not envious. I'm happy for your career, and as you said, all the things you've helped deliver to millions of listeners.
Yeah, I mean, things are not over yet, but it's certainly up until this point been a very fulfilling, adventurous life.
What's your next thing?
Well, we've got we're still trying to keep an eye on Chick's legacy. So we've got a new electric band album that's coming out, a new live album that's coming out. We've got another that's kind of a quasi classical, not classic, well, sort of classical jazz, kind of thing that was recorded live in Europe, and just various projects. We've got a vault of. I mean, I would record every show, multi-track. So there's a lot to choose from, plus stuff that's never seen the light of day. So hopefully they will, and just keep Chick's music coming out and helping people live a better life. I
can't think of a better way to wrap up. Thanks a lot, Bernie.
Yeah, my pleasure. Good talking with you.